the infusion of positive energy into the lives of single Latter-day Saints everywhere. This is Joy in the Journey Radio.
Oh yeah, peeps. Welcome back to the wonderful, splendiferous, joyous episode of Joy in the Journey Radio. I am Lance, your host for Joy in the Journey Radio. Today is the 30th of June, 2021, and this is episode number 183 and video episode number 1, Defending Our Constitution. With Independence Day this coming weekend, let's return to conference and review President Oak's address about the Constitution. That address, entitled Defending Our Divinely Inspired Constitution, intrigued me with its principle-centered approach. And President Oaks provided needed clarification. For instance, our belief that God inspired the Founding Fathers to produce the Constitution doesn't mean every word is pure gospel truth. Also, you aren't apostate just because you aren't a conservative Republican. And we shouldn't teach or advocate adherence to specific political choices and affiliations in our church meetings. I'm thankful President Oaks publicly declared those ideas. I'm also thankful he focused on eternal principles throughout his remarks, especially the principle of moral agency. The Constitution certainly isn't perfect, but it does support that society most free to exercise agency. Thus, we should all be defending our Constitution, despite its flaws and limitations. President Oaks began his remarks by establishing his authority. A former clerk to the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, law professor, and justice on the Utah Supreme Court, he's certainly more than amply qualified to have a platform. But the qualification he listed last, and most important, intrigued me most. He's been an apostle of Jesus Christ for 37 years. As President Oaks described, that means he's
responsible to study the meaning of the divinely inspired United States Constitution to the work of his restored church.
Here he segues into a discussion of moral agency. God inspired the Founding Fathers to assemble a system of government that would maximize the exercise of moral agency. And as we know, agency is key in our Heavenly Father's eternal plan for his children. Defending the Constitution, therefore, promotes God's plan of happiness. President Oaks then mentions some of the threats to the undergirding principles of the Constitution. Said he,
"Despite the divinely inspired principles of the United States Constitution, when exercised by imperfect mortals, their intended effects have not always been achieved. Important subjects of lawmaking, such as some laws governing family relationships, have been taken from the states by the federal government. The First Amendment guarantee of free speech has sometimes been diluted by suppression of unpopular speech. The principle of separation of powers has always been under pressure, with the ebb and flow of one branch of government exercising or inhibiting the powers delegated to another. There are other threats that undermine the inspired principles of the United States Constitution. The stature of the Constitution is diminished by efforts to substitute current societal trends as the reason for its founding, instead of liberty and self-government. The authority of the Constitution is trivialized when candidates or officials ignore its principles. The dignity and force of the Constitution is reduced by those who refer to it like a loyalty test or a political slogan, instead of its lofty status as a source of authorization for and limits on government authority.
The threats of the Constitution, and by extension to our Heavenly Father's plan, are very real and very much growing. So what can we do about it? What should we do to defend the Constitution? President Oaks provides some answers. I love how he starts by encouraging optimism, declaring,
"We should trust in the Lord and be positive about this nation's future."
Founded in faith and positive thinking, we should pray for leaders in all nations and then seek to exercise a righteous influence civilly, peacefully, and legally. Also, in these divisive times,
we should seek to moderate and unify.
These days, everyone loves to talk about their rights and what they're entitled to receive, but few speak of their duties and what they should give. It's people performing their duties that make the rights of all available. That's why I applaud President Oaks in listing 3 duties every good citizen has. 1. Learn and advocate the principles of the Constitution. 2. Seek and support good people who will support those principles in public office. And 3. Make your influence felt in civic affairs as informed citizens. President Oaks then describes how we can and should make our influence felt.
In the United States and in other democracies, political influence is exercised by running for office, which we encourage, by voting, by financial support, by membership and service in political parties, and by ongoing communications to officials, parties, and candidates. To function well, a democracy needs all of these, but a conscientious citizen does not need to provide all of them.
That power-packed list reveals more I need to do to support the Constitution. And I love how President Oaks reiterated King Benjamin's counsel not to do everything at once. We all have different seasons in life, and the combinations of actions appropriate in one season may not be appropriate in another. Let's truly celebrate Independence Day by defending our Constitution. Perhaps the best place for you to start is where I'm starting, by reading and becoming more familiar with the actual document itself. Or perhaps you need to consider running for a position in an upcoming election. Or maybe you need to call or email an elected official about a current issue. What you do today may not be what you do tomorrow, but we should always be doing something. The threats to the Constitution President Oaks described have grown precisely because far too many of us have been doing nothing in civic life. We've been busy focusing on our careers, our loved ones, and our own lives. And enough responsible people have been so absorbed in that busyness that we've allowed irresponsible people to hold office. The Constitution has imperfections, but one thing it does right is give ultimate power to the people. Let's celebrate the birth of our nation by learning about and then committing to safeguard that power. And the best way to safeguard it is to exercise it civilly, peacefully, and legally. When we persist in so doing, we can enjoy the fruits of freedom to exercise the moral agency essential to God's plan and preserve that gift for the next generation. And that will bring us more joy in our journey. Back in a moment.
Joy in the Journey Radio.
And welcome back from that break piece. We are here in the JJ Zone, Join the Journey Radio. Today, broadcasting about defending our Constitution. You know, with Independence Day coming up, it's going to be coming up this weekend. And, you know, I just thought it would be appropriate to talk about something related to the founding of the country. And, of course, you know, President Oaks gave this wonderful address on the Constitution in the last conference. And so I thought, hey, this is great. 2 birds with 1 stone, because those of you who are longtime audience members of the program know that every once in a while we go back to the last general conference and review one of the conference addresses. And so I thought, wait, this is great. I can get 2 birds with 1 stone with this. But, you know, now I'm getting 3 birds with 1 stone. I've got, you know, the return trip back to conference. I've got, you know, talking about the Constitution with Independence Day coming up this weekend. And number 3, we're video. Peeps, we're video now. You can plainly see. I mean, if you're still listening on the Join the Journey radio station, you know, you're not getting video on the radio station. I'm sorry. This is not happening. You know, if you're listening on a weekly podcast that we distribute, yeah, that's going to be strictly still audio. You're not going to get video with that. If you want to get video, Okay, now you got to go. Well, there's two places you can go. One place you can go is YouTube, and I'm going to see if I can try to put in the whole program today. YouTube has been, yeah, in the past, not really amenable to letting me put in certain pieces of video. So we're going to see. I'm going to try to put the whole program today up here on YouTube just to see what I can do with it, and also to give you a flavor of the typical way that you're going to see the video is this: if you go to jointhejourneyradio.com and join our membership community, become a JJ Zoner. That's the way it works. And so, you can get access to all sorts of wonderful, wonderful things there on the Join the Journey Radio website when you become a member. It's worth more than I'm charging, but I'm intentionally keeping the price low because I'm trying to be as inclusive as I can and, welcome as many people into this community as I can. And, if you want to see the full video going forward, then you need to become a JJ Zoner and join our membership group. Now, I'm excited that this is coming to video. There's some work that still needs to be done. Okay, for example, it's pretty clear the lighting is not the best. I got some of the things I got to work out, but I'm not waiting until things are perfect before I go forward. I'm just going to go forward with what I got. I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm just going to take a step out, and I'm just going to keep on moving because, the longer you wait to do anything, the longer it's going to be before you get to whatever success is there on the other side. Because we talked about before on the program, results don't come from wishing. Results don't come from washing. Results come from one thing and one thing only. And that one thing is action. You don't take action, you don't get results. You take poor action, you get poor results. You take good action, you get good results. You take phenomenal action, and you get phenomenal results. That's the way this works, peeps. The action you take leads to your results. So if you don't like your results, take a look at what you're doing. Take a look at your actions. And, that's the whole idea that we have here behind Elder Oaks's wonderful address on the Constitution. That's essentially what he's saying. He's not saying it directly, but reading between the lines of what he's saying, it's very clear that this is what he's saying. That, if you don't like the shape of your country, it's because you've let things go. If you don't like the way things are, it's because you haven't been active enough to promote the things that you want in your country. You just haven't been that way. And so, this is what he's getting at when he talks about how, I love that quote where he talks about, we played it in the monologue. He's talking about ways in which we can make our influence felt. And that this is a civic responsibility of those who enjoy the freedom that the Constitution promotes and provides. So here we've got a list of things. I'm pulling it up here. Let's see. Yeah, so we do it by running for office. That's the first thing he mentioned. I find it interesting. That's the first thing he mentioned. The second thing he mentioned is voting. I would have thought to put those in the other, reverse order, but no, that's not the way he worked it. He said, look, we're going to run for office. That's the first thing we do. And then we vote financial support, membership and service in political parties, which, to me, that's the one that I kind of shy away. That's the shy away from the most, I would think, that financial support. Just because I've always been a big believer in George Washington's farewell address, and where he said that political parties will be the death of the country. And really, that's what I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen political parties that are fighting with each other and doesn't really seem to be very productive. So yeah, I've kind of shied away from political parties. Actually, more than kind of shied away. I keep myself aloof from them. By going ongoing communications to officials, parties, and candidates. So in other words, you're writing, you're calling, you're emailing, all that stuff. and you're actually showing up at meetings and making your voice heard. I mean, these are ongoing communications, and that's an important thing. A lot of people don't understand that when you look at your elected representative, whether it's on the federal level or the state level, and you reach out to them, you know, you call them on the phone, you send them an email. First of all, the person who's receiving your communication is not going to be the person in office, right? It's going to be some staff member whose job it is to deal with this sort of stuff. But they get this thing, and especially if you are a repeat communicator, so it's not just a one-off thing, but it's like they recognize, hey, this individual has reached out to us before. They look you up. And by that I mean they look at your voting record. Now, they can't actually see, or at least they shouldn't be able to see, who you voted for. But that's not really what they're looking at. What they're looking at is, what's this person voting for? Are they just voting for federal offices? There are those people who, when they go to vote, they just vote for the president and that's it. There are those ballots out there, and they exist for both sides of the aisle. And then there are those people who vote for the federal offices and the statewide offices. And then there are still other people who vote for the, the federal offices, the state offices, the local offices, everything that's there on the ballot to vote for. And I'm one of those individuals. I vote for everything. And, these are the types of people who are going to get the more attention. They're going to take you more seriously if you're voting for everything versus if you're only voting for president. Because a person who votes for everything is going to be more serious about the things they're saying. They're not just some hack. They're not just some activist. It's more likely that these people are actually very concerned about their community and their country. And so they're going to be taken a lot more seriously. So, I love how it says by voting, it's the second item that President Oaks listed there, vote, you know, people who don't participate in the process have no room to complain about, what happens when everything falls apart. And, when there are things that just aren't working quite right. And we see a lot of stuff around us today that aren't working quite right. And so people who don't vote have no reason to complain. None. Because, hey, you don't participate in the process. You don't make your voice heard. And I've heard all the arguments, right? It's like, well, what's my one voice? There's hundreds of millions of people. It doesn't make a difference. And okay, you know what? If you think it doesn't make a difference, you're right. It doesn't make a difference. Then what are you complaining about? Seriously, what are you complaining about? I mean, we have a process by which your voice can make a contribution. And really, it's each little individual grain of sand may not be much by itself, but you put them together and you can build a dramatic, artistic, wonderful looking sand castle. The sand castle is composed of many, 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 many grains of sand. Each individual grain by itself is meaningless, but together it can become something wonderful to behold. That's the whole idea behind the form of government that we have. It's not a pure democracy. It's a constitutional representative republic where we elect individuals to act on our behalf. And when those individuals that we elect on our behalf are acting in ways that don't really represent the desires and interests of the people who elected them, then they should be removed from office and replaced by people who will. And that's the system that we have. And, there is a lot of corruption everywhere. There is a lot of, let's say, nefarious backroom deals. There's a lot, there are a lot of, really bad actors on both sides of the aisle. Let's be honest. But, things aren't going to get better if we just sit back and, if all the responsible people are just busy about their careers and their families and their lives and they don't get active. But when people come together and they get active and they start, looking on these things that President Oaks was talking about, where you're looking about running for office and voting and financially supporting people who are good and wise and will uphold the Constitution, and membership and service in political parties so that we can, try to reform these corrupt institutions and try to get them on board with promoting good and wise and honorable people and ongoing communications to officials and parties and candidates. I mean, you got to have all these things for the country to function well. But we ourselves don't need to be involved with all of them all the time. Like I was saying in the monologue, you're going back to, God, I just had a brain fart there. King Benjamin, where he's saying, it's not required to run, faster than you have strength. We have different seasons in our lives. And, in one season, some of these activities may be appropriate. And in other seasons, those same activities will not be appropriate. We all have to make our own choices and decision on, which of these actions are we're going to include in the present chapter of our lives. But, we need to be doing something. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate that we do nothing because, as Edmund Burke said over 200 and what was it now? Maybe now 300 years ago, I think, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And too many of us have been doing nothing. Too many of us good people have been doing nothing. And so I think that Elder Oaks's conference address on the Constitution is a wake-up call for, good men and women here in the church, in the Latter-day Saint community, to rise up and start becoming more active. And those of us who are single, yeah, you know what? We have a part to play too. We can be involved in this. We should be involved in this because we're just as much members of our community and our country as anyone else. Well, we're well overdue for a break. Let's go ahead and take that break. And when we come back from the break, I want to dive in further into President Oaks's conference address here. So we'll get to there. See you there on the other side.
Joy in the Journey Radio.
Oh yeah, peeps, welcome back to the JJ Zone. And for those of you who are listening during the radio broadcast, you just heard Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man, which is completely appropriate for multiple reasons. One is, Aaron Copland, for those of you who don't know, is arguably the greatest American classical music composer. We've had classical music composers. I think arguably Aaron Copland is the greatest. He was around 20th century. I mean, he's long since passed, but A Fanfare for the Common Man, really popular tune in its day. I think it should still be popular, and especially when we're talking about the Constitution. And because that's really, the brilliance of the Constitution is that it really gives ultimate power to the people. And so, a tune like Fanfare for the Common Man, completely appropriate. So, of course, if you're just watching on the video podcast, then, the video is not going to have all the music that we play during the breaks. If you listen every Wednesday night, on Join the Journey Radio on our radio station, you can find it online, get more information at jointhejourneyradio.com. You hear music that we play during the breaks, and the music is specifically chosen as a part of the program. So, the vision that I've always had for Join the Journey Radio is that it's not just talk, there's also tunes. But the problem with putting it into the video is that, not that I'm technically incapable of doing it, I could very well do it. But the problem is the law, and specifically licensing. For me to actually include it in the video program that, if you're watching now on video, that, you know, the problem with that is the licensing. It's horribly expensive. I mean, a few years ago, the government actually increased the cost of these licenses, and from my perspective, it looks like you're trying to keep a lot of the little guys out. But be that as it may, it just became terribly expensive, and so what do you do? I mean, you got to pay up, and Join the Journey Radio has never turned a profit. I mean, I've always had to pay for it out of my own pocket, which is one of the reasons why you see things on the website which you don't get it if you don't buy. You don't become a JJ's owner. You don't join our membership community unless you purchase the membership. And you know, there's there's books that I sell in order to generate revenue. But all in all, I mean, as of today, right now, I mean, where I'm sitting right now, as of this recording, no, I mean, I'm still paying for stuff out of my own pocket. So, I mean, that's what it is. So, I had no idea where I was going with this. So, yeah, become a JJ's owner, support Joy the Journey Radio. And then, I mean, now, for those of you who want to hear the music with the program, you don't have to pay anything for that. It's completely free. Just tune in on Wednesday night on the radio station and you can listen to the program and hear all the music with it. I would love, I mean, to get to a point where, I'm bringing enough money to where I can actually afford the licenses, and then I can go ahead and put the music in with the video program. And then, you can listen to, the program with the talk and the tunes whenever you like. But that's just not where I'm at right now, Peeves. So, hey, you know what? But we're still gonna enjoy the place where we are because that's what we do on Joy in the Journey Radio. We find the joy in our journey. So back to President Oaks's what I think is going to be a classic conference address on the Constitution. One thing I love about these conference addresses and how they come out online now is that you can actually, I mean, it's not like it wasn't before, I mean, you could actually, they have end notes with their discourses. And, I mean, before the advent of the internet, you were waiting for the Ensign magazine, or is it Ensign? I can never get that straight. And I know that they're particular about being one or the other. Anyway, the church magazine would come out, but you'd have to wait for it. I mean, it's like with the internet, you're still waiting, but you don't have to wait as long. It's something I've always wondered about. It's like, why does it take them like 3 or 4 days for the conference stuff to come out on the church website? I mean, seriously, it's like you don't have an army of people who are tackle this. It's like a lot of these people I know, they're writing out their talks before they give them. You can't, I mean, how long does it take you to transcribe this stuff? I mean, seriously. I mean, I don't understand why it takes so long, but okay, maybe that's I'll find out, of course. But I really love like the looking up the end notes for these conference addresses after the fact. And for this address from President Oaks, we're talking about the Constitution. Some of those end notes are very interesting. For example, this one talks about where he mentioned in his address J. Reuben Clark saying the Constitution, quote, must grow and develop to meet the changing needs of an advancing world, unquote. And President Clark said that back in 1939. At the time he was a member of the first presidency, and so he was speaking with quite a bit of authority. 1939, interesting year. FDR's New Deal was in full swing, and he was attempting to transform the country from what it used to be. And for one of the things that was going on, it's like this isn't this isn't what the founding fathers intended. This is not in the Constitution. And here's President Clark coming out in the midst of all of this saying, yeah, the Constitution must grow and develop to meet the changing needs of an advancing world. So it sounds like, the church hasn't adhered to that idea of strict constructionism that we hear in some constitutional circles. That it should be grow. And what I found fascinating is that if you look at the end note for that, President Oaks also includes a quote from Brigham Young, where he taught that the Constitution was, quote, the foundation, and it was for after generations to rear the superstructure upon it. So apparently there's some acknowledgement here that the Constitution is not perfect. Now, that's no surprise, really, that the churches would believe the Constitution is not perfect. I mean, those of us who understand church history know that the prophet Joseph Smith went to Washington, D.C. After all of the trouble that was going on in Missouri to try to get redress for the unconstitutional treatment the saints had endured, and how he was just rebuffed. And so, I mean, this led to some, you know, I guess, political maturity. you know, I've noticed that in my own life that as I've grown and I've gotten older, that my political ideas change, my philosophy changes, and it becomes more mature. And that doesn't mean that I'm reaching the same end as anyone else whose political ideology is matured. It's just saying it's gone this transformation. And the prophet Joseph Smith undoubtedly returning to Nauvoo empty-handed, that affected the other leaders of the church. And one of them was Brigham Young. So, it's not really surprising to see Brigham Young saying, it sets the foundation, but there's more that needs to be done to build on it, to really make it something that supports freedom and liberty, a true bulwark against tyranny and oppression. And certainly, we've seen in different administrations, uh, you know, people coming in and basically acting contrary to the ideas of liberty and freedom. And they're openly embracing the ideas of tyranny and oppression. And we've seen that in different administrations on both sides of the aisle, if we're going to be quite frank with it. So, that's why, we have to become more civically active, as President Oaks is recommending and encouraging us to do in his conference address on the Constitution. We have to be more active than we have been in the past. So, with Independence Day coming up this weekend, I think it's a good idea for each of us to sit back and reflect on, well, what part do I need to be playing? What do I need to be doing to defend the principles of the Constitution? And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the monologue. There's three things that we need to keep in mind. Okay, we need to, first of all, exercise our influence civilly. There's so much discord and contention in our political discourse today here in the United States. It's so disheartening, and nobody's really listening to anybody anymore. And I think, half our problems would be solved if we would just sit and listen. Now, what I mean by that is we're not listening with the intent to understand. We're listening with the intent to reply. We're looking for that wedge that we can put in and trounce on the other side. And if you're not in the same box as me, then you're not a member of my tribe, and therefore you're the spawn of Satan. And we see this on both sides of the aisle. And I'm sorry, we have to get past this if we're going to avoid outright civil war, because that's the road we're headed on right now. Because we're not acting civilly with each other. We're not listening to each other with the intent to understand. And we're not tolerating differences. We're not allowing other people to believe in different things. And we have to start coming together and acting more civilly with each other. Second thing, we need to act peacefully. I mean, all of this violence doesn't get anywhere. Violence doesn't solve anything. We've got to stop the violence, and we've got to start acting peacefully. I look at a character like Mahatma Gandhi, who gave birth to the largest democracy this world has ever seen, and by largest I mean most populous. And, India is the second most populated country in the entire world, and he achieved his independence peacefully. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't violence along the way, right? I mean, there were people who weren't quite on the up and up with what he was doing on both sides of the aisle. People who were with Gandhi and people who were with the British. There were people on both sides of that aisle who instigated violence. And while the circumstances of those individual instances may be understandable, Gandhi never found them acceptable. He always insisted on nonviolence. And yeah, it was a long, hard road. I mean, it was a few decades. I mean, he actually began. He arrived in India during World War One. Previously, he was in South Africa, where he was also stirring up trouble with his nonviolent routine. He left South Africa, went back to India, where he was originally born, and this was during World War One. And it wasn't until like the 1950s that India finally achieved its own independence. So you're looking at almost half a century. And that's a long time to be, fighting for something. And yet the fight that he fought was nonviolent. And that's the way we have to be. We have to be nonviolent. We have to be peaceful. And, lastly, we need to make sure that our influence is felt legally. We don't want to be participating in activities that are outside the law, because then that gives the government an excuse to come in and clamp down. So you have to be legal in what you do. Don't, break the law. Be legal in what you do. So civilly, peacefully, legally, make your influence felt. We'll overdue for another break. Let's go ahead and take that break. And when we come back from the break, we'll finish up the program. See you there on the other side.
Joy in the Journey Radio.
And welcome back from that break, peeps. We are here in the JJ Zone, Joy in the Journey Radio, today broadcasting about defending the Constitution. And unfortunately, the time seems to have just flipped by for me. So we're gonna have to call it quits here. This is all we got for the program today. So I want to thank everyone for listening. And I just think that sometime this weekend, as we're celebrating Independence Day, I think it would be a good idea for all of us to sit down and just have some serious reflection on President Oaks's conference address about the Constitution, and ponder it, and prayerfully decide what your part should be to be more civically active in your community and in your country. What is it that you should be doing? Which of these actions that President Oaks recommends and encourages, which of these actions are right for you at this time in your life? And, you don't have to make a commitment that's going to be long-term. Just, decide what's right for me to be doing right now. And when things in your life change, then you can reevaluate this. But, decide what it is you should be doing and do your part to be civically active, because that's what's safe. If we do our part civilly, peacefully, and legally, we can defend the Constitution, we can defend freedom, and we can promote the maximum use of agency, which is so key to our Heavenly Father's plan. Well, like I said, that's all the time we have for Join the Journey Radio. I want to thank everyone for listening, watching, if you're actually watching, because we're now on video. And so, thank you, everyone. I hope I was able to offer you something that was helpful and beneficial. And if I have, I invite you to do something for someone else. Pay it forward. find somebody else in your circle of influence and, reach out and help them. And it may be something as simple as a smile. It may be someone, a conversation. It doesn't have to be something grandiose. It can be just something simple, but whatever it is, pay it forward, help somebody else. And don't forget, come back next week for the wonderful, splendiferous episode of Joy in the Journey Radio. So until next time, this is your host reminding you there is joy to be had all along our journey. So take that joy and journey on.
This is the